So today I will be sharing my knowledge about the Bangladesh English. So there are four questions. And for the questions number 1, how English arrived in Bangladesh. So the history of English in Bangladesh can be divided into three main phases of the political history of the nation, reflecting the changing rule and status of English. First, the polity does not easily allow itself to be located in either the outer or the expanding circle of the Kachuvian model. Despite the ordering of this particular chapter, Bangladesh would belong to the outer circle together with India and Pakistan. But its separation from Pakistan in 1971 created for itself a special social-linguistic niche which is distinct from the neighboring linguistic ecologies. While both India and Pakistan are multilingual and multi-ethnic polities, where English is needed for international and inter-ethnic communication, this critical rule of English is missing from the monolingualized, if not monolingual, polity of Bangladesh. Importantly, English is faced with a strong linguistic nationalism in Bangladesh, which has a near unique history of valorizing the mother tongue, Bangla, the sole national and official language. Secondly, despite Bangla-centric nationalism, the role of English in the education system appears outstanding for a low-income country, where the language has been taught as a compulsory school subject from grade 1 to grade 12 and beyond since 1991. Nevertheless, the overall learning outcomes in English had been disappointing. The gap between the input into the output of English education implies that the use of English for daily communication is modest in Bangladesh compared to that India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Lastly, although Bangladesh has one of the largest English learning population in the world, there has been limited research on the teaching and learning of English or its use in the country. The breakup of Pakistan and the emergence of Bangladesh in 1971 brought an opportunity for Bangladeshis to reflect on the language questions from a nationalistic point of view. However, Bangla is dominant in many areas of society. In the second decade of the 21st century, English finds itself in a complex linguistic ecology and socio-political imaginary in Bangladesh. As elsewhere in the world, English is an object of social desire because of a strong popular faith in what the language can offer. Next question. What is the status of English in terms of education and language policies in Bangladesh? Ascertaining the current status of English in terms of education and language policies in Bangladesh is not a simple task. This mainly due to the absence of what we call status planning for English. There is no policy articulation about English that can be applied to the whole society. Although language questions have several significance in social, cultural, and political life of Bangladesh nation, language does not seem to have received commensurate policy investment. Bangla replace English in all important domains, including higher education, in the next few years. However, within a decade or so, English came under policy favor, arguably owing to the influence of globalization and privatization of education, since the scope for developing proficiency in English in the national curriculum was restricted by the national education policies. A private English education market was set up to cater to the needs and aspiration of the wealthier class. While the public sector may dispense with English, the booming private sector is increasingly relying on the global language. For instance, public sector education maintains a balance between English and Bangla, but the private sector seems to have left the national language behind in moving forward in the new liberal environment. The absence of explicit policies for language languages other than Bangla is notable. The status of Bangla is determined unambiguously by policy, which may help understand the place of English. While English has increasingly penetrated into Bangladesh under the influence of globalization, technology, and global flows of information, the lack of adequate functional proficiency in English among the general population is reported as a national concern. At the same time, the development of only limited proficiency in Bangla by a section of students given their reliance on English also causes unease about the state of education in the country. The third question is describe the functions of English in terms of education, employment, media and entertainment, politics, NGOs, creative writing, and electronic communication. So the function of English in terms of education, employment, media and entertainment, politics, NGOs, creative writing, and electronic communication. So in education is a key domain where English has an overarching presence, both as a language for learning and as a language in which students are expected to develop functional proficiency. However, given the inefficient cultivation of English in education school, English achievement is yet to have a significant impact on society. English is more dominant in private English medium education, which caters for a little less than 2% of the students' population. Although there are no specific policies, all private universities have adopted English as the medium of instructions, leading to what has been called macroization of micro-level policies. In terms of employments, the domain of employment does not allow for an easy or reliable assessment of the role of English. While jobs in certain sectors may require high levels of English proficiency and other communication skills, Bangla may suffice in many others. English is hardly used in workplaces in the public sectors, including the bureaucracy. Regardless of the extent of the use of English in workplaces, there is a strong social perception that job seekers with proficiency in English have an edge over others. While youth unemployment is a critical issue in Bangladesh, as in many other countries, it is also true that often employers fail to recruit people because they do not have adequate skills, including English proficiency. In general, English plays a more dominant role in the private sector than in the public sector. The role of English in media and entertainment is modest, as this sector uses mainly Bangla to cater to its domestic audience as well as the Bangladeshi diaspora around the globe, although a significant role of English is understandable for calling and processing news from overseas media outlets for local consumption. The role of English in BTV is restricted to 4 daily news bulletins and several other English programs for the entire week. The High Court orders previously mentioned which restrict the use of English. Bangla is the language of politics and political expressions in Bangladesh. Using a language other than Bangla in this field can be considered politically incorrect with serious repercussions. All major political parties try to influence popular opinions by direct contact with people through political meetings and campaigns, protests, rallies, and other forms of mass gatherings where Bangla is used as the only language of communication. The current politics of language considers the two languages to be in zero-sum relationships, and therefore attempts are made to ensure that the promotion of English does not undermine the dignity and official status of Bangla. However, there are no specific policies for English to guide politics and political discourse in the country. English probably has the strongest presence in non-government organizations or NGOs, since many of the NGOs have to communicate with global development partners for funding and other needs. English is a default option for international communications. All major NGOs have their websites in English. Although there has been little research on language use in NGOs, anecdotal evidence suggests that the majority of their written communication is mainly in English. NGOs make a significant contribution to the output of written English in Bangladesh. Although creative writing in English in the region dates back to the early 19th century, Bangladeshi writing in English, or BMW, has yet to receive notable recognition. In the schools of Bangladesh, both Bangla medium and English medium writing skill has been given much more importance than other three skills: listening, speaking, and reading. Young learners are involved in the different types of writing activities to enhance the writing skill. They are exposed to text writing, copying from the board, filling worksheets or books, or other more. Both Bangla and English medium claim that they are focusing on students' creativity in learning English language. Therefore, they are utilizing creative writing as a language tool. Email communication in Bangladesh is characterized by the use of English. However, in the public sector, email is not the official form of communication, even though it probably constitutes the dominant form of communication in the private sector. Mobile phone-based short messages service, or SMS, constitutes another area of significant English use in Bangladesh. They found various features of language use, such as code mixing and code switching, local innovation, abbreviation, and rule breaking. More recently, WhatsApp has become more popular than SMS, which has entailed an even wider use of English. The fourth question: what is code mixing, code switching, and technology mediated in Bangladesh? As the following SMS text illustrate, established business in Bangladesh blends English and Bangla to varying degrees to inform existing customers about products and services. Moreover, composing in Bangla is difficult and time-consuming because of the complexity of the Bangla alphabet and the frequent use of joint letters. Communication technology also facilitates linguistic innovations other than linguistic transgressions. Code mixing and linguistic transgressions are also found in the urban linguistic landscape, particularly in signs and billboards. Code mixing is most obvious in the nomenclature of major political parties in Bangladesh. The institutionalization of nativization, which implies documentation of local features, making claims about their localness and innovativeness to formalize them, is premature at this stage. In fact, currently, there is hardly any awareness of Bangladeshi English, probably because features of local English are yet to be studied and documented.